Previously, I discussed The Quality of Mercy, an episode that was overall bland, buoyed up by a few moments. I mention it now because it and this two-part story were all written at about the same time, when JMS was horribly sick with the flu, and with his vital role in the show, couldn't afford to take time off or bring in someone else. So he worked away at it, and after he finished Quality of Mercy, had no memory of having written it. He was that delirious during the process. And Voice in the Wilderness likewise had a problem. Way too mediocre a story, especially for a two-parter. The original launch film had done well on video overseas, and so this two-parter was specifically requested to be available for sale in a similar market. And the last thing the show needed was this special story to be a so-so. So after turning it in, JMS went back to reread it and realized it was pretty crap and told everyone, "Hold on, I'm doing this one over from scratch." He was still sick, but in under a week managed to crank out both revised scripts, and most of what you see in this two-parter is really a first draft. So with that insight into the creation, let's get started with the first episode. Talia is concerned about an issue with Garibaldi, that every time she gets into the transport tube, he's already there.
It's like he knows.
Talia, Mr. Garibaldi is many things, but he's not omniscient.
That's the power of love. That's the power of love.
Speaking of feeling the Earth move, there's been some earthquakes on the nearby planet of Epsilon 3, so they're sending a science team to go check it out. Take that, nerds! After the titles, we learn the ship is okay, but some Star Furies are sent to rescue them. But they're already planning another trip the following morning because this throws everything they thought they knew about the place into question. Well, not all the reasonable things, like down is still down over there. They don't turn inside out if they land on the planet, and light works the same. Basically, it's weird down there, okay? There's a strange mystery that this place was supposed to be nothing but a big uninhabited lump of rock, and suddenly it's doing all these strange things. It's a mystery. But what is no mystery is how the Narn feel about the Centauri, as Londo mentions at the conclusion of trade deals with Delenn.
But for Shakar and his people, they will do all that they can to destroy us, until the universe itself decays and collapses. If the Narns all stood together in one place and hated all at the same time, that hatred could fly across dozens of light years and reduce Centauri Prime to a ball of ash.
That's the power of hate. Speaking of stuff flying through space, that beam is still there, and their studies confirm that it's some kind of beacon. Not sure of the details, though. They'll have to wait for the scientists to go science at it first. But that's for the morning. Right now, Delenn has a visit from an old friend. Old because she's known him a long time, and old because he creaks when he walks. As she welcomes him inside for some bingo and matlock, Sinclair hears some troubling news. And it's on the news, actually. Ivanova noted that there was a suspicious absence of talk about Mars in the latest updates. Well, Mars is a nuthouse, see. There's so much craziness to constantly report on that the lack of anything crazy to report on is, in fact, worthy of reporting on. So yeah, no surprise in the news reports that all contact with Mars has been cut off, a consequence of rebellion against the Earth government.
Whose ancestors migrated to Mars from Earth over the past 100 years have demanded independence for the Mars colony. Or, and I quote, "The sand will run red with Earther blood."
Well, it is the red planet, so it's a good place for it. There's more trouble for Sinclair, though. Jeffrey Tambor isn't looking so good, is he? Sinclair isn't sure what to make of that, so he seems to just decide, I'm not going to think about that. And I don't blame him for a minute. One of my medicine changes gave me a side effect of hallucinations. And it is freaky. One time, there was a smiling evil emoji the size of a hubcap. That's not me making something up. It actually happened. Well, the experience happened. Obviously, the thing wasn't there, and that's what you keep telling yourself. It's not really there. It's not there. It's all in your head. You're not actually seeing this. Something people who saw the Emoji Movie were no doubt telling themselves, too. The next day, though, the topic is Mars.
Garibaldi's taking it pretty hard.
Yeah, I figured.
He's still stalking Talia, but his heart obviously isn't in it. Meanwhile, Delenn and Drawl discuss his visit, and he finally admits he's here because there's problems back home. Things have changed so much, the place is just unrecognizable to him now.
I am going to the sea.
Thrall. No. You're still too young to go to the sea.
You're only a guppy in your swimming course. But it's the inevitable concern when you've lived so long, tried to hold on to things and see it all crumble to dust. You're trying to hold back the waves and succeeding only in getting yourself wet. And you just want to give in to the inevitable. What's it all about anyway? If this is what can happen, what's it all about? So he wants to go to the sea, which I'm guessing means to die, or Delenn wouldn't really be making such a big fuss over it. You promised you wouldn't go to the sea without me, and I've used up all my vacation days partying at Soltoberfest. Meanwhile, Ivanova preps the science team, warning them that the Starfury escorts are there to protect them, but they're not atmospheric craft, so be careful, or they're not going to be able to escort so much as serve as witnesses to your death by idiocy. So while they head out, Garibaldi's cheese that he can't get through to Mars. He has someone there he cares about, and he has no idea if she's dead or alive. So he finally goes to see Talia, and while she thinks this is a ploy at first, he explains what happened. How he and this woman really hit it off when he was on Mars. It got really serious, but then he left for B5, and on bad terms. He needs to know she's all right, so he'd like to get a channel through using the top-secret Psy-Corps facility that's located on Mars. She doesn't think they'll be inclined to help, but his sob story has moved her. And besides, there were all those times that he didn't peep on her in the shower, so now she owes him a favor. So while she's seeing to that, the science mission is underway, and those cowboy astrophysicists with their notorious reputation as mavericks decide to leave their escort to get some readings in the atmosphere. But that's when the uninhabited planet decides to lob a few missiles at them, and there's no chance they'll transform into a whale and a bowl of petunias. Thanks to Ivanova's quick thinking, the ship and Team Science are saved, and they explain why an uninhabited planet is currently firing missiles at them.
And if you come with me, I think we solved the mystery. We didn't go deep enough. Here. This is a computer-enhanced high-resolution scan of Sector 14.
We never checked the planet's vagina for missiles. That should have been obvious. The figures suggest the missiles came from 5 miles beneath the planet's surface, which, if it can throw missiles around, is naturally a concern for those in a pressurized capsule in orbit around it. By the way, this naturally asks the question, why is B5 in orbit around this particular planet? If it's not of any particular importance, then why did they build it around this world? Well, my theory, and I have no idea how this fits in with established lore, I'm just basing on what I can think of. The Epsilon system is one of the systems located in neutral territory between all of the major powers, so when they went to pick a system, this was the system they wound up with. As for the planet, well, you need the station to not fall into the sun, so you need to orbit the sun. You'll also need to have a jump gate for all the traffic to and from B5, so why not put both of them over a planet, since it's obviously in a stable orbit around the sun, and it'll probably be a lot easier to have two objects being a relative distance to each other if you have them orbiting around a planet as opposed to trying to do it around the sun. Plus, with the planet's gravity there, it'll be more inclined to draw in meteors that would otherwise hit the station or the traffic around it. So it can seem odd that they randomly built this thing over this weird planet, but I don't think it's that big of a coincidence when you think about it, especially when you factor in the likely theory involving the Minbari influence over B5's construction. Meanwhile, Garibaldi has a run-in with Londo while the former is brooding.
Water. Fascinating. I never touched the stuff myself.
That would explain the smell then. Londo manages to cheer Garibaldi up a little. This is a fine example of how, when the characters have chemistry, JMS's conversations can really come through. Some of the lines in the show I found are what I think of as paper jokes. You can see them sitting in the script as being perfectly fine gags. They're effective and they're funny. But when the actor says them, they just die. But the chemistry between these two rarely allows for a misstep like that. On his way back, Londo also has a vision of Jeffrey Tambor in the hallway, and then fades. Londo only looks on in puzzlement, although I'm surprised he didn't check his drink to make sure it wasn't responsible. Meanwhile, Sinclair and Ivanova are going to head down to the planet together to investigate. This Star Trek approach of sending the two most important people in for reconnaissance is atypical of Babylon 5's approach, but its rationale here is obvious. First contact is just too important to fuck up. The human race was nearly exterminated over one bad first contact. If you send in anyone, it has to be two people thoroughly trained in the procedure so that they don't start some galactic war because they thought the heir to the throne was an hors d'oeuvre. They suit up since the air is unbreathable and soon find a dead guy, possibly holding a weapon, and having seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, figure they better check to see if he was killed by a trap. Usually it's blow darts and not lasers, but either works. Past that is when they get to the money shot, all the advanced technology courtesy of Big Huge Corporation, the biggest. While they're left to ponder their own insignificance in the face of such great power, Delenn and Drawl swing by Londo's as he explores human culture, where he is confused by one of our most popular songs.
You put your right hand in, you put your right hand out, you put your whole self in, and you turn yourself about. You do the hokey pokey, you give a little shout. That's what it's all about. That didn't even make sense! It doesn't mean anything. I have been studying it for 7 days. I had the computer analyze it. I swear to you, it does not mean a thing.
He's not going to be much fun at weddings. Garibaldi's not in a better mood. Talia said Psi Corps won't give him access. They don't want to even acknowledge they have a facility there, but they can say that there's nothing confirming that the old flames survived. So while he's coping with that, seismic activity picks up down on the planet, and Sinclair and Ivanova are in real trouble now. Once it lets up, another image of their visitor arrives, and soon the dude himself is seen in a chamber beyond.
Help me, or your people, all your people will die.
Well, thanks for clarifying that. I was okay with some. Some of my people need a good killing, but not all of them. That clinches the deal. They pull him out of that contraption to bring him back to Babylon 5, but just as they're trying to return, a mysterious ship is coming through the gate, and cliffhanger!
On your trip back, I'd like you to take the time to learn the Babylon 5 mantra. Ivanova is always right. I will listen to Ivanova. I will not ignore Ivanova's recommendations. Ivanova is God.